Long lines at polling places, but is early voting turnout helping one party over another? What we know about the voting history of the people casting early ballots. A Texas congressman steps down, setting the stage for an election showdown that could have nationwide importance. We'll hear from both candidates in this key congressional race.
Texas is the #1 state in the United States for new job creation.
The governor touts his record on the campaign trail, but his challenger has a different view.
I think our priorities are off right now. We need to bring it back to the things that are important.
What both candidates want voters to know before the election. Hello, and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. Texas has a record number of registered voters, and they're hitting the polls at a much higher rate than we've seen in previous midterm elections. Many voters in Travis County had to wait in line to cast ballots on the first day of early voting. It happened to voters around Texas. Some polling places had lines all week long. So far, early voting is on pace to more than double the turnout from the last midterm election, but it's running slightly behind what we saw in Texas during the 2016 presidential election. The question a lot of people have is which candidates will benefit from the higher turnout? We're getting a closer look at the numbers. Ryan Data and Research analyzes voter data for Republican campaigns. They took data from the 15 largest counties in Texas and examined the voting history of the people who cast ballots. In the first 3 days of early voting, nearly 36% of the people who voted had recently voted in Republican primaries. Nearly 33% had voted in recent Democratic primaries. Nearly a quarter of people who had voted had no primary election history, and almost 8% had never voted before in Texas. Both candidates for governor are campaigning across the state to try to rally support before Election Day. Governor Abbott cast his ballot on Monday in Travis County and afterwards held a campaign rally with other state GOP leaders. The governor touted the success of Republican leadership in Texas, starting with the state's economy.
Texas has the fastest growing economy in the United States. In fact, our economy now racks up a $1.7 trillion gross domestic product every single year. To put that in context so you can understand how large our economy is, if you were to compare the Texas economy not with other states but with other countries, our economy is larger than Canada, is larger than Australia, and believe it or not, our economy is larger than Russia's economy. And that makes me more powerful than Putin.
The governor also told the audience that Texas schools are doing better than ever before. Then he promised to work with lawmakers in the next legislative session to raise teacher pay. Education is also a key issue for Abbott's opponent, Lupe Valdez. I sat down with her to talk about her ideas on schools, immigration, and what she thinks about her chances on Election Day. Sheriff Valdez, thank you for being with us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Talk
Josh.
to me about what you will do for your #1 priority if you become governor of the state of Texas.
It's been from the very beginning, public education. Public education is an equalizer all across the board, all across party lines, all across ethnic lines, all across economical lines, all across everything. Public education is the future of Texas. We have to make sure that Texas continues being strong. And if we don't start paying attention to public education, that is not going to happen.
Of course, public education is directly tied to how we pay for that. You know, school finance, the system has been in flux for many, many years, and it's directly tied to property taxes.
Yes.
This has been a big talking point for you as well. Tell me how you would deal with this issue.
Well, you know that property taxes, your two highest payments, are public education and hospital districts. Those are the two things that we need to start paying attention to. The budget is the moral document of the state. We decide what our priorities are. I think our priorities are off right now. We need to bring it back to the things that are important across all lines. And we need to make sure that when we enhance public education, that we have the funds to do it.
When we talk about, money, we have to look at the economy and unemployment, both of which, are doing really well in Texas right now. How would you maintain that?
Well, for one thing, in order to maintain good economy, you've got to have an educated and healthy workforce. And if we don't start paying attention to our education and our health care, we're not going to have that in the future. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a university. It can be trade schools. It can be other things. But we need to have the opportunity for folks to be able to get there. If we don't start paying attention to these things, we're going to lose that.
You've said that you want to see a comprehensive immigration plan for a pathway to citizenship. How do you do that when most of the immigration decisions are made in Washington?
Well, the first thing we do is we stop the attack on the dreamers. Texas is leading the attack to deport all dreamers. My goodness, the dreamers were raised here, they went to school here, they have jobs here, they start businesses here. There are teachers, there are doctors, there are architects, there are pharmacists, and we want to get rid of them? They're helping the economy. They're helping maintain a healthy economy. Well, the first things we have to do is stop the attack on that. And SB 4, my goodness, you know, I get passionate on these things because I came up and testified along with a large percentage of law enforcement, came and testified that SB 4 would hurt us. Yet they still pass it as security to the neighborhoods. And all it's done is cause fear in the neighborhoods. There's crime being committed that is not reported because they're afraid. Even citizens are afraid to report because they don't know how this works. This is hurting us, not helping us.
Talk to me about your relationship with the law enforcement community. When you talk about SB 4 and your past as a sheriff, you know, clearly that's been something that has been part of your campaign as well. I remember at the debate there were a lot of law enforcement officers that showed up in support of Governor Abbott.
Those groups will almost always endorse the incumbent. They want to play it safe. Now remember, Governor Abbott holds the purse. And I know personally that he holds that purse with a vengeance. Do you think people are going to go against him knowing that? Of course not. And, you know, even though some groups may do this, the rank and file continually votes in my favor.
What do you think of the polls? They don't show you up.
You know, if the polls were always correct, right now we'd have a woman president. All the polls said she was going to win. So the polls that matter to me are the ones that I'm hearing every single day as I go out, and the ones that will go out in the election booth. Those are the ones that are going to make all the difference.
Valdez has been campaigning across Texas with other candidates down the ballot, similar to what Governor Abbott has been doing. The governor did not accept our invitation for a one-on-one interview. A tale of two candidates.
Not against anything, but for the United States of America, for each of us to have the brightest future possible.
Two different approaches to win votes in the race for Senate.
Where's Beto on taxes? He wants higher taxes.
A new poll gives some insight into how voters are responding to the contrasting campaigns. Last month, we told you about a poll that showed Beto O'Rourke surging ahead of Senator Ted Cruz. Now that poll has an update and a new result. The Ipsos poll released Wednesday shows Cruz carrying a 5-point lead with likely voters. That's a big shift from the September Ipsos poll, which had O'Rourke leading by 2 points. But O'Rourke is telling his supporters that they're going to prove the polls wrong. His campaign aims to get more people to vote, including people who have never cast a ballot before. And he says his supporters are key to making that happen.
More powerful than any TV ad, more powerful than anything we can post on Facebook or Instagram, more powerful than almost anything else is a human-to-human connection in this divided moment in this digital age.
At his rallies, O'Rourke speaks of the need for people to reject partisanship and bring the country together. Cruz campaigned alongside Senate colleague John Cornyn. He pointed out their partnership helped win the fight to confirm Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. And Cruz made sure to mention his opponent.
Where's Beto on taxes? He wants higher taxes. He voted against the tax cut. He voted against making the individual tax cut permanent. And he's been very honest what he wants. He wants to raise your taxes.
Cruz is also hoping for a boost from President Trump. The president came to Houston on Monday to headline a rally for Cruz's campaign. A caravan of migrants heading toward the border.
Now you've got a caravan coming up here because they know our system is broken.
It's highlighting differences in immigration policy between two men running for Congress.
On the actual border entry points, we'll have more capacity, have more judges. One of the biggest things we have right now is a backlog.
We'll hear from both candidates on the issue in this key Texas race. A big story on Election Day will be which party controls Congress after the vote. Several districts in Texas are in play, among them District 21, which runs between Austin and San Antonio, then west into the Hill Country. Republican Lamar Smith currently holds the seat, but he's retiring after more than 30 years in Congress. Now someone new will represent the district. The race pits former Ted Cruz Chief of Staff Chip Roy against businessman and veteran Joseph Kopser. Our Phil Prazen sat down with both candidates, starting with Kopser.
So this district has elected a Republican for years and years and years. Why is this time going to be different?
Well, what they never counted on was a boot blue jean combat vet businessman, father of 3 daughters, who was a former Ronald Reagan Republican, now Democrat, who's really, in my case, able to communicate with everybody on both sides of the aisle.
News of this week has been this caravan that's coming up of immigrants. Is this a for real issue that we should be worried about?
Well, we absolutely have to worry about immigration, making sure we have good immigration reform. Prior to every talk show host out there on the Republican side of things, and my opponent included, we can do that without this ridiculous open borders that they keep talking about. Certainly not something I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, real reform to help us at the border entry points, and then in between those border entry points to allow the Border Patrol to be able to see and apprehend with the lowest level possible the people that are coming to do us harm.
So let's go a little bit into that. What are we not doing now that you would like to see us doing when it comes to the entry ports, or at least the border security?
First of all, you have to have the business community at the table. They are the source, if you will, of much of the demand, i.e. hiring people in this country, those who are here legally, those U.S. citizens, and those that are here undocumented who are working in our company. So you first have to get them to the table. Secondly, on the actual border entry points, well, have more capacity, have more judges. One of the biggest things we have right now is a backlog.
Theoretical line to get into the country. The judges could make that line work better, faster.
Yeah.
When it comes to what you do to the people that are already here, undocumented or came here illegally, what would you like to see done?
Well, you have to deal in reality. They're here. They are here. So let's start talking about ways to give them a path towards legal working status. I want to collect some of that pay revenue, not through cash under the table between an employer illegally hiring someone. I want that to be reported because I want more money for teachers, for pay, for infrastructure. I want to be able to see them come out of the shadow.
If they came here illegally, they should not be rewarded with a path to citizenship or even legal status. Yeah. And a lot of people think like that. Yeah. To those people, you say what?
They're here. They're making our products cheaper, our food more accessible. They are already here. So rather than pretend like it's not happening, you're talking to a dad who raised 3 daughters. Guess what? Premarital sex happens. I don't deal in the world of the theoretical or what ought to be, could be, should be. I like dealing with the way things are and fixing the problems right in front of us.
So healthcare, with that issue, what do you see as the problem?
Well, the problem with healthcare is the fact that we have, once again, people living in denial. They're trying to stick their head in the ground. The reality is we already have healthcare for all in this country. It's called the emergency room. So even if you're not covered by a plan, you're going to be able to receive some kind of medical care, broken arm, infection, whatever it is, because we are a good and great country. But we're paying the most expensive kind of medical care, which is in the emergency room. I want to see a health care plan for all, where we're all covered.
Do you have a chosen, program or route to that solution?
Whether it's called Medicare for all, which, by the way, I don't think will pass the House and the Senate with the votes that we have now or even in the future. But what we can do is start talking about lowering the age of eligibility for Medicare, raising the opportunity for more people to be covered under Medicaid, taking the expansion through the Affordable Care Act so that Texans, whose taxpayers are currently leaving but aren't coming back in the form of Medicaid, they'll be covered. Once we get more people covered and ultimately get everyone covered, then we can see costs start to come down.
When you're meeting those independent voters out there who might remember that they did not like the Affordable Care Act, or maybe they voted against it in 2010 or in one of the other elections. What do you say to them?
It's built on a framework that was set in place by many conservative and right-leaning think tanks over the last 40 years. It said that the only way to control costs and to bring health care down to a reasonable way is to have an individual mandate. Everybody's got to be a part of the coverage. All the Republicans have done since 2010 when it passed is just chip away to make sure that no one is actually receiving all of the potential of this plan. They've removed individual mandates. They've now gone after pre-existing conditions. And why would you do that other than, as the far right is doing right now, for political reasons? Because if we know this, Republicans in states where they expanded Medicaid, like in Kentucky, oh, they yelled at Mitch McConnell when Mitch McConnell tried to take it away, and in the end, they didn't take it away.
We spoke to both candidates in the race. Up next, Republican Chip Roy shares a different vision for the district. You're watching State of Texas. We're taking a closer look at the race for Texas House District 21, one of the open congressional seats in Texas. We just heard from Democrat Joseph Kopser. Now our Phil Prazen gives us perspective from the Republican in the race, Chip Roy.
We'll just start with the very super basic question of what do you think this race is about?
Well, I think voters have a very clear choice here in the 21st Congressional District about whether you want to continue the great successes we've been seeing over the last 20 months in terms of job growth, in terms of the jobless claims being at all-time low. There's a lot of things we have left to do. And so I think people that I talk to out throughout the 21st District, they're really concerned about making sure we secure the border, making sure that we've got health care freedom and their ability to get doctors and affordable health care. And they really want to see the budget balanced.
You mentioned border security. Right now we have this caravan that's coming up that's drawing a lot of attention. Do you think we should be worried about this?
Well, I think what it should tell us is that we've got a very flawed immigration and border environment today. And we're refusing to do our job. And here's the problem. It's bad for our sovereignty, but it's also bad for the immigrants in question. We're allowing the cartels to have ownership of how our border works. And you've got all of these people, children, women, traveling here. Women get sold into the sex trafficking trade. Women and children riding on the top of train cars. Women dying in the deserts trying to come here. And that's because we're just refusing to do our basic duty to secure the border, have doors that will open wide according to our laws.
So specifically, what would you like to see done on a policy basis when it comes to securing the border?
I always hear excuses about why they can't secure the border. So, well, private property in Texas, so we can't have fences. So, well, hold on a second. Most private ranchers I know have a lot of fences. Let's start down in Brownsville. Let's start down in the valley. Let's just move up the river. Look, I think we need a wall and we need physical barriers. I think the point is get busy building it, and then when you hit a point where you think it doesn't work, if somebody makes that case, then let's work together and solve the problem. It doesn't need to be this monolithic struggle.
What would you like to see done with the people who are already here illegally?
That's something that I think needs to be done sequentially. The American people are tired of the same thing, the status quo, things happening over and over again. They want to see their border secured. Let's get the border secured. Let's stop the problem. It's like triage, right? In any situation. Let's solve the problem at the border. Let's make sure we have E-Verify. Let's make sure we have interior enforcement. Let's get all that in place. It won't take long. Just pass a bill. Get it done. And then let's see the progress of that. And then let's have a conversation about who's here.
I could see a skeptical voter say, well, so we're going to elect somebody who doesn't know what the step 2 is.
I've got a pretty good idea of step 2, 3, 4, 5. I've been working on immigration for a long time as a federal prosecutor, first assistant attorney general of Texas, a lawyer on the Senate Judiciary Committee. I'm going to tell you that what the American people want and what the people in this district want is a secure border and common sense reforms so that we can actually control the situation. Then we can have a conversation about people who are here illegally.
When you mentioned health care with your health care freedom, what is wrong with what we're doing now?
Well, what we're doing now is obviously causing costs to skyrocket out of control, and people are unable to see the doctor of their choice. They're paying double, triple, quadruple for their health care, double, triple, quadruple for their health insurance. Now, my opponent and other Democrats on the other side of the aisle want Medicare for all. Medicare for all would bankrupt existing Medicare, and it would layer another $3.5 trillion a year, basically double what we already spend in our government. It would bankrupt our country and bankrupt our healthcare system.
There will be people out there who will go, well, if the government wasn't requiring, the coverage of pre-existing conditions or this type of procedure or that type of procedure, then private corporations or companies wouldn't do it. I mean, isn't that a concern?
The market will provide that. The problem is it is so constrained right now, it can't. You know, look, the system you want, direct primary care with your doctor so you can see the cost of what you're getting and pay for that service. Health savings accounts where you have money in your account and you can pay for it. Health sharing organizations and ministries where you can defray costs among a group of peers in a shared agreement. And then catastrophic insurance that you carry from one job to the next.
You talk about healthcare as the frame of it's another product. There are people out there who say the healthcare is a right, and you guys just aren't going to get along with that.
Well, is food a right? Is shelter a right? Is clothing a right? I believe all Americans should be able to have access to low-cost, affordable energy, food, clothing, health care, shelter, access to abundant jobs. I love right now that we've got unemployment at its lowest rate in recent memory. And imagine the healthcare environment with the American people unleashed to provide those options and what that would provide for millions of Americans to have lower cost, affordable health care.
I appreciate your time on this.
Phil, thank you. Thanks for what you do.
That's all for this week's State of Texas. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.